Welcome back to Artificial Evidence, the podcast where the smallest details lead to the biggest revelations. I am your host, Owen Carver. Today, we are traveling to the heart of America's farmland, a place where the horizon stretches wide and the land is dotted with rusting grain silos, forgotten barns, and secrets buried under decades of dust and harvest. On the morning of October 10th, 1995, the small farming town of Ashford, Iowa, woke to a horrifying discovery. Inside an abandoned grain silo on the outskirts of town, a local farmhand found the body of a young woman. She was barefoot, wearing a faded red dress, her hands folded neatly over her chest as if she had been placed there with care. There was no identification, no sign of struggle, no clear indication of how she had died. For weeks, no one came forward to claim her. No missing persons report matched her description. It was as if she had simply appeared in that silo, lifeless and alone. Then, a name surfaced, and with it, a story no one was prepared for. This is the girl in the grain silo. October in Iowa brings a chill that settles into your bones. The harvest is nearly done, the fields stripped bare, the landscape turning from golden to brown under the weight of the coming winter. Farmers work from before dawn to well past dusk, and in a town like Ashford, life moves to the rhythm of the land. Ashford is the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, a town where strangers stand out and rumors spread faster than wildfire. So when the body was found in that old grain silo on the edge of the Callahan farm, the news traveled fast. The farmhand who discovered her, 19-year-old Travis Delmont, had been sent to clear out the abandoned structure. The Callahan farm had long since fallen into disrepair after the family moved away years earlier, and the silo had stood empty ever since. It was supposed to be routine work, a simple cleanup job. Instead, it became a crime scene. The girl was young, maybe late teens or early 20s. Her dress, though worn, was clean. Her feet, despite the dirt floor of the silo, had no cuts or abrasions. There were no ligature marks, no signs of a violent struggle. The medical examiner struggled to determine the cause of death. There were no drugs in her system, no bruises or wounds that suggested foul play. It was as if her body had simply stopped. But people in Ashford were not convinced, because they had seen her before. The first person to come forward was Claire Hensley, the owner of a small diner on Main Street. She swore the girl had come into a restaurant just a few nights before the body was found. She had sat alone in the corner, not ordering anything, just staring out the window as if she were waiting for someone. Claire had asked if she was all right, but the girl had only nodded before walking out without a word. Then, a man named Leo Strickland, a retired trucker, said he had picked up a hitchhiker matching her description a week earlier on Route 29, just outside of town. She had been quiet, barely speaking the entire ride. When he asked where she was heading, she simply pointed forward. She got out at an intersection near the Callahan farm, the same farm where she would later be found dead. The name came days later. A woman from 2 counties over, a social worker named Diane Mercer, recognized the description. The girl was Olivia Fenton. She had been in and out of foster care since childhood, a troubled past leaving her without roots, without a real home. But here was the problem. Olivia Fenton had died 1 year earlier. Her death had been ruled an accident, a drowning. Her car had gone off the road and into the Little Crow River during a rainstorm. When rescuers pulled her from the wreck, she was already gone. The funeral had been held. Her remains had been buried. Yet here she was. The town was stunned. Law enforcement scrambled to confirm the details. A DNA test was ordered. The results came back clear. The girl in the grain silo was Olivia Fenton. This revelation changed everything. Her case was reopened. The medical examiner exhumed her original remains, or what was supposed to be her remains. What they found was even more disturbing. The body buried under Olivia's name had been misidentified. It was another woman, similar in age, but with no apparent connection to Olivia Fenton at all. For over a year, no one had questioned it. No one had known. So where had Olivia been for all that time? Who had she been with, and how had she ended up in that silo? Investigators turned their attention back to the Callahan farm. The land had been abandoned for years, but people remembered the last owners, the Callahan brothers, Mark and Joseph. They had been quiet men, reclusive, never quite fitting into the town. Their parents had died young, leaving them to run the farm alone. One of them, Joseph, had disappeared years earlier. Some said he left town, others believed something darker. Mark Callahan, however, still lived nearby. He kept to himself, rarely seen in town. But when police went to question him, they found his house empty, his truck was gone, his phone was left behind, he'd vanished. It was the break investigators needed. They searched his property, combed through his records, looking for any sign of Olivia Fenton. What they found instead was a series of journals, years of meticulous notes, names, dates, locations, entries that referenced a girl who had shown up at his farm 1 year earlier, confused and afraid. A girl who looked just like Olivia Fenton. The last entry was dated October 9th, the night before she was found in the grain silo. Mark Callahan had written only 3 words: "She remembers everything." To this day, Mark Callahan has never been found. The case remains unsolved. The girl in the grain silo, the real Olivia Fenton, was laid to rest in her hometown. But the questions linger. How had she survived that crash? Where had she been for over a year? And who was buried in her place? Thank you for listening to Artificial Evidence. If you have theories, share them with us online. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review. And remember, the algorithm knows.